Sony launched new firmware for the Fx3, and by the look of things it introduces big changes to the camera. So let's get started. My name is Ian Nieuwenhuizen and I am an Alpha Pro Filmmaker. My goal is to create professional and international standard content with simplistic gear and to teach others to do the same. Things to be aware of with this firmware update. It is very important to note before you start, after updating to this version, the camera settings will be reset to its default values. It is recommended that you make note of all the camera settings before proceeding. The camera cannot read the old version after the upgrade. With the addition to log shooting mode, the picture profiles were reviewed and the gamma setting S-Log2 is no longer included. After the update, you will need to use the gamma setting S-Log3. So before you start the update, please ensure that you have a full battery and that your computer is fully powered throughout the process. For all our South Africans, that means to check the load shedding timetable. For all the international guys, you don't have to worry about that. Thank goodness. To update the firmware, you need to download and run the firmware from the Sony website. I will put the link in the description. Make sure that the camera's USB connection is set to mass storage. Connect the camera to the USB-C cable and click on Next on the software updater. From there on, the software updater will take over and do its thing. After the update, restart your camera and you will see that you have to set all the basic parameters like time and date, etc. as if it's the first time using the camera. Like I said previously, all your settings will be gone and the old settings is not compatible with the new system. It's a bit of a hassle, but definitely worth it. Now that you have installed the new firmware, you will see there's a lot that has changed from the get-go. The first thing that you will see if you are in the movie mode is that there are changes to the layout of the standby screen. It is much cleaner in my opinion and definitely feels more conducive for filming. The same applies for S&Q mode as well. Overall, there are less icons cluttering the actual image, and that will definitely be something that a lot of you will enjoy and find refreshing. Another small addition is the swipe up function on the screen while you're recording or in standby mode. Just swipe up from the bottom of the screen and the function menu will pop up. When you go into the menu, you will immediately see some big changes. The first big change is the inclusion of the main menu. And oh boy, what a great addition. It is a very fast and intuitive way to have a look at your current settings. It gives quick access to a lot of settings that are important for video recordings. And although custom menus could give you similar functionality, the main menu is more visual and I find it much faster. It is also great for the first-time users. It's another step towards simplifying the shooting experience. The biggest and probably the most important update is the addition of the log shooting modes. They are Cine EI, Cine EI Quick and Flexible ISO. Cine EI is a shooting mode that allows you to shoot with two base ISO settings, 800 and 12,800, and always uses the S-Log gamma curve with the S-Gamut Cine color gamut. This is a fully optimized mode designed to allow you to get the very best image quality with the greatest dynamic range from the Fx3. The important thing to understand is that you can't change the ISO in Cine EI mode. You can only change the exposure index. I will explain more in a second. You can monitor the footage with either the built-in LUTs, for example the Rec 709 conversion LUT, or you can import your own LUTs. If you know you are going to use a specific LUT, then this is a great way to be able to see the footage with the desired end LUT. To be able to add your own custom LUTs, you need to format the card after the camera was updated with the new firmware. Then you will see a new folder where these LUTs can be placed in. This is only for monitoring. In the Cine EI mode, the LUT is not baked in, so the file will still be an S-Log3 file. If you are used to the Cine EI mode on other cameras like the Fx6 and the Fx9, then this will be a very familiar and welcome change for your Fx3 workflow. If you are not familiar with Cine EI mode, please listen up. By changing the exposure index, you are only changing the exposure for monitoring. And it is important to make sure you understand this because you will make big exposure mistakes if you are under the impression that the exposure index is changing the actual exposure. So why would I use the EI then? To put it plainly, it helps you to correctly expose for either highlight priority or shadow priority. If you want to have less noise and more detail in your shadows, then it's better to overexpose your footage by 1 or 2 stops. So for example, if you are shooting on a base ISO of 800, then you have to drop your EI to 400, which is a 1-stop drop. Then by adjusting the exposure by either bringing in more light or changing the ND filter or even opening the iris to compensate for the 1-stop, you will then have the same exposure as before on your monitor, but in reality you will be recording your footage 1 stop lighter. In post-production, you will have cleaner shadows with more details. One thing to note is that you will lose 1 stop of dynamic range in the highlights by gaining a stop in the shadows. It is recommended to only use this method for gaining a stop or 2 in the shadows. If your priority is highlights, you can use this method, but be careful for noisy shadows because you will technically be underexposing S-Log free footage, which can get noisy quite fast. The next mode is Cine EI Quick. This is a shooting mode in which movies are recorded using a base ISO, as in the case of the Cine EI mode, but the base ISO switches automatically according to the adjusted EI value. So if you are on a base ISO of 800, then there will be an automatic switch to a base ISO of 12,800 when the EI value goes higher than 3,200. The next mode is Flexible ISO. This is a shooting mode that allows you to record S-Log footage by adjusting the exposure settings including ISO sensitivity according to the shooting scene. Basically, it is shooting S-Log free like you were used to on the previous firmware. If log mode is disabled, you can shoot the normal picture profiles that you are used to. The only thing that changed is the fact that picture profile 7 to picture profile 9 is no longer there, but I have 4 custom LUT profiles. This is great because you can load your own LUTs in these profiles for monitoring, and it's also baked into your footage. So if you need a fast post-production turnaround time, this option is great. Another major upgrade is the Timecode Sync. The Fx3 can be synchronized to a second camera with a timecode output terminal using an optional adapter and standard BNC cable. I couldn't test it, but I will definitely do a follow-up video if I get to test it out. Okay, so now that we've looked at the major upgrades, let's look at a few smaller upgrades as well.
By creating a custom key in movie mode, you can add essence marks. By assigning the custom key, you will be able to create a marker that can make life easier for you in post-production. For instance, you can add a marker for the best take of the shot, or maybe you want to break up an interview with markers by marking all the questions. However you want to use it, I think it's a great addition. This can also be done in playback by creating a custom key in the playback mode. There are new options regarding the monitor view. A monitor flip direction feature is added, by which you can select a reverse display of the image and the menu screens depending on how the monitor is opened and orientated. This update also improves the overall operational stability of the camera.
Thank you for watching. I really hope this helped. Till next time.